Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast, connecting kill team communities across the globe. If you're passionate about the tactical skirmish game that brings together strategy, lore, and creativity, you are in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay updated with our latest episodes. If you want to support the show, check out our Patreon. Your support means a lot to us. Follow us by using the social media links in the podcast description for all the latest news, and be sure to leave a review to let us know what you think. All right, you guys, I want to take a quick moment to let you all know about Crossfire Games that is sponsoring this episode, a couple additional episodes as well. Crossfire Games makes some super cool tokens, token holders, measuring tools, all sorts of awesome goodies. They're super, super cool, really like high-quality 3D printed stuff. You can grab it from the Etsy link in the show notes and use the coupon code JUSTANOTHERKILLTEAM, all one word, all uppercase, at checkout to get a little discount and to help us out.
Back with Crossfire Games, one of our big sponsors for the podcast. Nick, nice to have you on. Talking about Crossfire Games products, but not really what we're here for, because someone's been playing Colts, terrorizing the UK.
Yes, I've just gone 13-0 in tournament settings now in 3 tournaments. They're a hilariously good fun team. Very fun to play, but I don't think they're very fun to play into.
Historically, that is how the Colts have played.
Yeah, they've got a lot of tricks, and people don't really know how to play into them too well yet. But that will change. It's almost like a new team coming through.
I mean, it is definitely a very, very different team from the last edition's version of Colts, because your torments and your mutants are less reliable, and your torments always have less health, so they're always theoretically more killable. But on a 13-0 tournament record over 3 separate tournaments, maybe not as killable as people thought they were.
Yeah, the way I've sort of figured them, which was really hard to change my game plan coming from Wreckers, was you hold off turning point 2 and you only make one torment turning point 2 and just hold back. So if you win initiative, you give it to your opponent, so you get 2 CP because they're very CP intensive. And then there are turning point 3 and 14, and turning point 2, you maybe give them 1 or 2 shots, just getting up to score your secondaries, score your primaries. And then turning point 3, they're having to deal with 3 torments. And everything else you've got going for them. So they're very, very strong, and the accurate 2 is insane.
Yeah, accurate 2, ceaseless, rending with 5 attacks on 4s means that you're generally getting probably like 2 crits and a hit.
Usually it's more like 4 hits or 2 crits, 2 hits. And that combined with Sickening Aura is just it levels, like you're killing Space Marines, especially when you use your double fight. They can also take crack grenades, and weirdly the mutants and torments can throw crack grenades. So run and fight for free and then throw a crack grenade at somebody else. Like, you're not getting any rerolls, and it is hitting on 4s, so it's a bit of a hope you spike sort of attack, but they're very strong.
But, I mean, to their credit, they are still a pretty wide team. So if you're fighting against Space Marines or Elves, you can use your last couple activations to just send a mutant or a torment up and just chuck a crack grenade, because it's a reasonably low-risk play. Yes, especially against Elves who are not going to counteract and then immediately run away or charge you or do something else.
Exactly. And they've got massive amount of survivability. So they have a once per game just to scratch and Vile Blessing, which really is helpful. The Unholy Talisman, which is another piece of their equipment, can once per turn a normal save into a crit save, and that pairs really well with Chitinous, which is one of their accursed gifts, which I usually put on the mutants and the torments. So the mutants, so it gets mutants and torments. For a save, so it's really strong there. They're really good with smoke grenades. So if you really want to push hard, turning point 1, you can run a cultist up and throw a smoke grenade, and then final activation, put the torment in it. So turning point, beginning of turning point 2, even if you lose initiative, you pop Sickening Aura, and that gives you a 2-inch bubble of -1 to hit, including in shooting. So they then have to make a choice. Do I run up and shoot it in the face at -1 to hit, or do I shoot it into smoke and can't retain crits, lose a dice. So it's a really good combo, that one, for that survivability. And then with the Vile Blessing on top of that, you're not taking much damage, and they can also double dip their damage reduction. So you have natively for mutants and torments, if you any damage of 3 or more on a 5-up, you ignore 1. But then if you get your icon guy up and pop his damage reduction, any damage of 4 or more, including crits, is just ignored for one of those. So effectively, if you pop that with a torment and then roll a 5, you're -2 to whatever attack's coming through, which is mental, really mental.
It is the old standby that Chaos Cults got away with at the Worlds that they crushed it at, where it was Alexa and Hava in first and second. And that was basically just the Arcanok stands in between 2 points. The 2 Torments stand 6 inches away from him, and they just stand there in the open or behind cover. And if you don't kill them, they take back then they had like the actual feel no pains. So you were taking on average probably, 20% less damage, probably between the 2 layers of damage mitigation on top of each other. And then because almost nothing kills them through 20% damage mitigation, they would immediately charge in, kill someone, and then fight twice and then explode.
Yes. Yeah, the explosions, it's a bit hit and miss. Like D3 and D6, but if it does spike, it's really good.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that you're using armored over, extra movement or the fly or the floating or even like the impact hits. Because I think in the old days with Chaos Cults, a lot of the players elected for extra movement, or extra movement was generally saved for the ploys. So you would add an extra inch if you needed it on the charge, otherwise you'd stage normally. They would generally use either, I think, barbed, because barbed, when you go in, that lets you hit a lot of breakpoints, or horned, because basically horned was the one that was on charge, do extra damage, and then barbed was the old reap, which was also an optional thing. So I don't feel like I remember people talking about chitinous all that much. So it's interesting to hear that you've been finding success with that. And do you feel like that's because it's changed over in this edition?
Yes, but basically a lot more, other than like melee specific teams, you'd probably take the brutal Sinewed, I think it is. But for anything with guns or any kind of shooting, I usually go with chitinous. Barbed is definitely one for the Accursed Gift firefight ploy. And then usually for my torments, I will choose either the movement one or horned, depending on the situation. Horned movement one usually on ITD, because it helps you get through doors a lot easier on the charges. But into elves and stuff, horned can do a lot of damage, especially into things with damage reduction, like the the Flayer for Hand of the Archon. Because then it just brings them down to that 2-hit kill instead of having to, hit them in 3, which they're going to parry out and stuff like that.
Yeah, managing melee breakpoints is a big thing that all Chaos Cult players who actually get good at Chaos Cults have to be able to internalize, because knowing when to hit certain mutations so that you can break, 10 wounds, 8 wounds, 7 wounds, 14 wounds, those are all really, really important. With 10 wounds being, one of the ones that gave them trouble in the past. I assume Felgor and Commandos are not really the threat they once were for current edition Chaos Cults.
Well, if Felgor, no, because the team's got so much stun. I can take stun grenades, of course, but because when they go,
because your Mind Witch can give out stun.
Yeah. So
and you have stun grenades. So every turn you're always subtracting 1. They can never interact with your Mind Witch because he has to do it, I think, on engage on the other side of the map.
It's on conceal.
It's on conceal, yeah. So it's just
as long as it's a valid target. Stun. Yeah, as long as it's a valid target. So it's not as good as, say, the Magus and Brood Brothers. But when they go engage, even if they're in combat, they're still a valid target. So you can just, point across the board and go, right, -1 APL. Now your frenzy isn't that good anymore. And speaking of the Mind Witch, his bubble of the Vortex, for you pop that at the end of turn 1 and then at the end of turn 2. And it's so good chip damage because the bubble is 2 inches from the token. So it's quite a large...
Oh, it's actually bigger than it used to be.
Yeah, it is by
just a
and
little
then
bit.
also,
It's not much, but when players think like, oh, we went from a 1 point to a 20 millimeter token, that's like 10 millimeters on both sides. It's almost an inch of extra range.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be visible either, so it can work through walls on focus. So you can pop it outside a door, and anyone behind that door is just -2 damage, and then mutant torment can come over at turning point 2 and fight through the door, go for it. Barbed is, I think, a lot better. I can't remember how it worked in the last edition, but now it's every time you strike, you do D3 damage to everyone else in combat.
It used to be Reap 1, Reap 2, which was hit someone else within 1 inch of you or 1 inch of your opponent for that much extra damage. So I believe it's a little better just because D3 is a higher upside, but it has a lower floor because it was Reap 2 when you were Torment.
Yes, yeah.
But enemy operatives not being able to assist is really powerful because it means that you can't have multiple people mog a single Torment to bring them down.
Exactly. But most people don't really want to go into fights with the Torment unless they get it quite low. They're more likely to shoot it, hence why I take chitinous for that. They've got some weird interactions, like the leader is really powerful now, and it's a good choice to take the comms array, because anyone within 9, it's 2 separate powers. You can point at them and go, right, you charge or dash 3 inches. And then you can also then fight as well. So having with the comms array, having a 12-inch bubble of that is massive.
Basically the whole map if you're located anywhere centrally, right?
Exactly. Where you can charge someone torment up, kill somebody, and then if they've got somebody within 3, they need to activate that person or try and kill that torment. Otherwise, that person's then going to die. So you can almost, if you spike well, or if you do a double kill with Unleash the Demon, and then do that, that's a triple kill in a turn with one torment, which is it's massive. It's going to anything that's lower activations in you.
And this is really the place that you've been making the adaptation, is moving from a turn 2 threat of 2 torments to turn 3 torments, which means because you can only make up to two torments a turn, you need to hold one of them in reserve, keep a couple of mutants, and then as you go into turn 3, you turn into 3 mutants, and then you have 3 of these crazy threat bubbles, and that generally overwhelms even the cagiest opponent. Because the first torment might not get a double kill, but someone has to react to that torment, and in response, you now have new avenues to go in with the second and third torment.
That's exactly it. I usually activate my torment last on turning point 2, just so he can, even if he just runs up and doesn't fight, or runs up and maybe gets a kill. Then to have, for that, 3 mutations, turning point 3 to go 2 torments and 1 mutant, and then that also gives me the option to make another torment after 1 dies in turning point 4. The things you got to watch out for with them, they're very CP hungry, so you always want to be going second turning point 2. And you've got to really watch your devotee economy. So sometimes you don't want to mutate because you need that guy to then run and pop a point or run up and do surveillance, or
interesting. That's actually
yes.
the next arc of the discussion is trying to figure out, what tac ops have you been doing? Because I think a lot of people, have rightly surmised that Seek and Destroy are, a non-3 APL team is kind of okay, and then Infiltration is one of the weaker archetypes. So the fact that you've been using, it sounds like surveillance.
Both. So I sometimes I use a lot more with storm objectives on ITD, because it's harder for them to then come over and contest their home objective, and you can really push down that one side of the board. But if it's on Volcus, I usually go with either Implant or Surveillance. Implant is good, but into like really killy teams that you just don't want to leave them alive, like Void Dancers or Hand of the Archon. You don't want to be doing that.
Marine teams, right?
Well, Space Marines are good for it actually, because to use Implant, because like they're going to stay around. Like you can charge in with a torment, or not a torment, a devotee, and just waste an activation there. hit him for 1, and then he's going to score 2 because he's going to live through the next turn. But surveillance as well, just drip feeding devotees up past the central line is really good to then use it for your last activation. And you can use the leader as well if you put a mutant 3 inches back from the halfway line. You can then use your leader to dash him up, so when he activates, he spends 2 APL, but then can then do the surveillance.
That is actually very cute. That is a hilarious way to use the leader's ability to push people forward.
Okay, so you're using the leader's ability to command the mutant to move forward and then gather surveillance?
Yes. So so I think I just broke up connection there. So
Okay.
putting a mutant 3 inches back and then using the leader to dash the mutant up, so then he can spend 2 APL to do that surveillance thing, and then next turn just turn into a torment,
Okay,
and charge from there.
Because the
And I
mutants
can imagine a
need to
world
spend 2
where
APL to do a mission action, just for anyone that doesn't know.
and then the
for a
torment can't
mutant,
do
yes.
missions actions at all, right?
No, but both can open doors for 1 APL on ITD. So you think, oh, I'm safe behind this door, but then I just open and charge and then fight for free.
That's right. One of the CP is you can fight twice, and one of the fights is free. But what that really reads is you gain an extra APL as long as one of those actions is a fight.
Yes. And you can also use it to get around stun, because one of them can be for free. You can charge in, even if you're stunned on 1 APL, pop it, and then fight.
Okay. All right, you're not frozen.
Sorry.
There was a second earlier where you like froze mid conversation. I was like, oh no, I can't. But yeah,
It's working.
I do feel like the team has always been very CP hungry. So I think even in the last edition, you had to juggle a lot of auras. And that's something I've heard locally from a couple Chaos Cult players, is that when they go hard on turn 2, they're basically spent on turn 3 and they have to basically re-hit a power curve. So you're delaying the power curve for an extra turn so that you have more power on the big turn. Have players been able to push you harder on turn 2 to force you to basically rethink your strategy? Or are you playing super far back on on your objective and not really pushing up to middle and your opponents?
A lot of my units don't even leave the drop zone in turning point 1. They're hard to kill from back that far, and then you can charge up and do that turning point 2. That's your staging, is turning point 2. And having a torment behind a Volcus door as well on a stronghold. There's a lot of maps where you can then stage out from there, and they have to push up to the mid board to control that point. And if they do, then final activation, you can then just charge with the torment out the door and go for it for that final activation.
So you're really getting a lot of use out of your single, or do you generally taking like a pair of smokes against shooting teams? One for turn 2 staging and one for turn 3 staging?
Sometimes. I mainly take, like, the go-to is the Vile Blessing and the Unholy Talisman for the Just a Scratch into shooting teams. And then I usually take 2 cracks. And then I'll usually take a heavy barricade, because you can put that heavy barricade, for putting it down 4 inches up, you can then put your icon guy behind it. And then he's covering up to the midboard with his damage reduction aura. The Blessed Blades are really good too. So if you choose to do the damage increase aura with the icon guy, that's a 5/7 power swords. So if they push up into you, you can do that, pop that, and then come through and smack them with the Blessed Blades. And having that double activation, where they can activate together, charge, fight, it's very strong.
Yeah, as any old Talons players could definitely tell you. I guess nowadays Exaction Squad has it. And Exaction Squad has a slightly more interesting pair, because it's got a guy with a shotgun and then a dog, and the dog like changes how fast it moves and how strong it bites. But the Blessed Blades with a damage boost are just basically raw power, because 4 dice on 4s, 5/7, lethal 5. These are kind of crazy.
Accurate one.
An accurate one. Yeah.
And then if there's a torment nearby, sickening aura, they're pretty gross. And you can also use the accursed gifts on them as well. So you can make them charge or give them an extra inch of movement. Like they've got a lot of versatility.
I think they can't use the abhorrent mutation because it excludes Dark Commune specifically.
Oh no, sorry, it's the devotees who can use it.
Yeah, the
right.
devotees can always pick up an extra thing on the way in because they're the only ones that are mutating. The Dark Commune, they're part of the protection racket for the Mind Witch and the Demagogue.
Yes, that's dead right actually.
You're taking the comms device every once in a while. So you have a core pair, and then you rotate through the universal equipment depending on the matchup. So what matchups are you taking? Things like the comms device compared to things like the heavy barricade and the smoke grenades. Like, which matchups have you been finding each of these things has been good on average? Because I'm sure Chaos Cults are not the easiest team at all to interact with. They're a melee horde with a lot of rules, so having some basic starting points might be helpful for anyone who's curious about picking them up. Because flavor-wise, Chaos Cults are kind of incredible.
Yeah. As a starting point, I'd always take Vile Blessing, and I'd always take Unholy Talisman and Crack Grenades. And then learn how to use the heavy barricade with your damage reduction guy, because that also doesn't need visibility. It goes through walls.
You just have to learn the icon, you know? As long as they know the icon is nearby, they've got the whichever boost they need.
Yeah. So, and having that 4-inch bubble around him is massive. And then also, if they get up close, you can pop Unholy Follower, get them a suppressor. And there's also play to push up one of those guys and have a torment 3 inches back. So then they go, oh, I'm going to charge this guy and kill him, and then you pop Unholy Follower, and all of a sudden they're having to fight the torment. It's pretty good, and it catches. There's a lot of sort of gotchas with the team that people will learn, and you can tell them all at the start. But there's so many rules with that team that you watch as their eyes sort of glaze over.
Yeah, why? If you want to be a big tournament player, you do need to have gone through all the rules by yourself at least once. So that when people tell it to you again in person, you can make the linkages for like where the spicy gotchas are. Because you can read through all the rules once, but the first time you're interacting with your opponent's rules are when they are word vomiting at you in a competitive table. You're like, okay, I will figure out what I need to do at the time. But Kill Team is definitely a game of, it's not quite gotchas, but it's about like layers of interaction. So if you don't know about, you've never seen a get down Mr. President ability, the first time that your opponent plays into it and they're like, well, I will get you one time. They're like, yeah, whatever. And then suddenly a torment has jumped in front of you, or a Crute Hound has jumped in front of you, or a drone has jumped in front of a shot that has a 4-up invuln and ignores saves or whatever. Those are like those moments where you're like, oh no, I've made a huge mistake and now I'm going to lose.
Exactly.
So Unholy Talisman, because it is a good defensive shooting thing.
Yes.
Vile Blessings, because Justice Scratch is broken, and we love Justice Scratches, especially because they don't cost CP. And then generally Heavy Barricade, because you're generally wanting to put your aura in a useful spot ahead of time.
That's what I would go for.
Crack Grenades.
Exactly. So for the barricade, learn how to use that Heavy Barricade with your icon guy. And then from there, map dependent, you can then throw in, or if you take the equipment option, you can then throw in a comms device or smoke grenades, or using other barricades as well to sort of slow down your opponent on certain things. Like, because the mutants are on a 25 mil base, you can put gaps of only 25 mils, and if they're a 28 mil, they have to climb the barricade. You can charge at the end of your turn, and then all of a sudden mutate up to a torment turning point, the next turning point, which they then have to deal with, and it's managed to get through that gap and get that long charge that they can't reciprocate.
And you can even do the same silly thing that old Colts players were able to get away with, of dropping a mutant close to your opponent and then making it a 40 millimeter base and then expanding into engagement range, right?
Yes. You can catch a lot of people out by that, and then popping barbed, and every time you hit, you're doing damage around them.
Yeah, there was also that old trick that you could do where you would make like a pile of models around the mutant, so the devos, you'd be like, yeah, get him, and they would mutate and push out because you've made all illegal the spots around him, and the only spot is forward.
Yes, yeah, that was an ITD play when you were trying to put barricades down. to stop
Have you
things
have you
mutants
gotten
from
any
getting through.
use out of like these very, very tiny tricks of the Chaos Cults playbook in your 13 win run in the UK?
Not the pushing the making a sort of circle around the mutants, but I have of the catching other people when you mutate, so you can always put them as far back as possible and then catch somebody else. Yeah, they're very strong. They're also, the versatility of the team. If you there's a ploy that if you put a mutant or a torment on a point, the enemy is -1 on that point. It's very strong. They also have a ignore injury as well, which also then gives them a reroll if they're wounded for defense dice. So they've got a lot of tricks that can catch a lot of people out, and they're really good at stopping people from scoring. And what they're really good at is the kill op. So you don't take the kill op, but they're all, because I'm a 14-man team, they're going to struggle to, like, most people don't kill 11 of my guys. So they're never getting up past kill op 3. While I'm usually, with my torments, getting up to sort of 4 or 5. Which that's a 2-point swing right there with the extra point at the end of the game for it. So they're really good at playing that.
In your extra 2-point, 3-point swings is really important. Considering we just had Shane on here a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how when you fight over the crit op, you're generally pushing up by 1, 2, or 3 points depending on how far you're pushing up, because there's no even scoring outside of a draw. So kill op being one of those things for the Horde teams is an advantage that Horde teams have that has been, I think, pretty hard for players to really make use of, probably because a lot of people are stuck in the mindset of staging for Turning Point 2, when if you stage for Turning Point 2, like move your operas up to the middle and your objective on turn 2, it just gives your melee opponents, who are generally Astartes or Felgor or all these other things, free staging points to aggress on you at the beginning of turn 2, which means that now your opponent has safe spots where you're stuck fighting over models that are like trapped in combat, right?
Exactly. The ability, you want your opponent to push up into you. That is what you want to do, and then you can punish them in Turning Point 3 for it. But yeah, it took me a while to sort of get my head around it, because coming from Wreckers, we just sort of run up and Turning Point 2, go for it. It's a completely different play style than what I was used to, and it took me a while to sort of get my head around it. But yeah, if people are looking to pick them up, they are an amazing team, and I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, I've got a couple things. First of all, I think that advice you have about just like stage for Turning Point 3 is great for Chaos Cults is probably good for a lot of teams. I mean, I've been doing a ton of games with Kasserkin, for example, and I think they would do a lot better if they stage for Turning Point 3, just because they're like too CP hungry if you try to play the whole game. And then like their whole like seize the initiative thing, if you try to do that every turn, you just like starve yourself out of CP. And if you do win initiative, then you just like don't have enough CP to do anything. Whereas like Kasserkin specifically, if they kind of follow that sort of like formula that you were just talking about, they, like you try to go second on Turning Point 2 so that you've got more CP and that you're more likely to win initiative on turn 3. And like I'm sure there's a bunch of teams that could do that well as well, which is very interesting. Yeah, also Chaos Cult is just super duper cool, and like as soon as we saw the preview, I like was in love with the team, and they were super, ultra strong, and so I didn't pick them up immediately. I was in the days of not playing the meta team, but
they were a bit broken.
Yeah, they were pretty feels bad. It sounds like you've got a recipe to kind of mimic that same level of insanity now, but just a little different version of it. It's very unique, and I love it.
Yes, they've lost a lot of things, like, and quite rightly so, was like the mutants and the torments going back to full health. Yeah. When they mutated, was that in the last edition was just broken.
It's awful. Yeah.
So it does make you play a lot more defensive with your mutants. to try and sort of keep them alive for that torment goodness. But yeah, there's I think I'm just trying to think other teams that would definitely, maybe Falgor. Like Falgor would do a lot better, I guess, staying in cover, waiting for you to push up into them. But you need the models to do it. So like having 14 models and 10 to 11 activations, you sort of need to sort of guarantee that last activation to make it really work. So hordes are really good at it. I don't know. Yeah, it's a tricky one.
I think between this conversation and Shane's conversation, I've like slowly started to think that horde teams need to be playing for the second half of Turning Point 2 and the beginning of 3 as like the main PowerPoint, because you're really never doing anything on turn 1 with how much heavy there is on Volcus. And then on In the Dark, you can stage up for turn 2, but you don't want to stage on top of the points, because you want to have setups where your opponent is not just getting free charge options that lock you in combat with them.
Exactly. It's also like there's a huge difference between cults and like a shooty horde, where I still feel the Vetguard, for instance, where although Vetguard got a huge glow up in the last
they're the best slate. They are the best shooting horde now in terms of like the raw shooting rules you have just on demand.
Yes, but the problem is the core rules are so against them, with the changes to obscuring, the changes to counteract. Like I played Vetguard in the last edition for about a year, and the whole thing was chump charging and charging up and not fighting just to hold that person in combat.
Yeah, that strategy is completely destroyed now.
Yeah, they can't do that. As soon as you fire, so say you move your plasma up and fire at someone, yes, you might kill him, but now unless that's your last activation, they then get a counteract and they might probably kill you. So you're going to lose your heavy hitting guns earlier on, and because I'm not shooting anything and can stay on conceal pretty much the entire way up the board, I don't have to worry about that as a Colts player. So as a horde, they're good. They're a good horde to play for a horde where they're not being hurt by the core rules.
Yeah, you have way more spaces to creep up the board, because now on Volcus there is just a lot of heavy floating around. You might not always be in an optimal position to do a mission action or do something else if you're staging behind heavy, but you can at least almost always be safe as you creep up the board.
Exactly. Very much so. And that's just keeping your devotees alive. So you're sort of playing that game of, well, I need to score a point, but I'm going to lose a devotee, and then am I going to have enough at the end of the game? So it's learning that as well is an interesting concept. And also using your dark commune at the end of the game to score you points and do what your devotees were doing in Turning Point 2 and 3 is really good. And that's where the Blessed Blades are really good as well. So usually I keep them by my home objective as a deterrent. So they're back a bit, and as soon as somebody tries to pressure my home objective, they're going to come up and have a go at them. So they're definitely not like a frontline unit, those Blessed Blades, but they're good for that.
Yeah, such an interesting team. Do you feel like the learnings that you've had as a melee horde will travel over into other teams? I know that we had Farstalkers on relatively recently talking about out-activating their opponents and using those activations to their advantages. And because this edition has generally seemed worse for hordes, it's not really been a thing that most players have really talked about. But it does seem like for the wider teams, there is room for you to have to use the activation advantage. It's just melee teams tend to use that activation better because you're not getting shot at nearly as much.
Exactly. They're perfect for it, the melee horde teams. But blooded, who are the melee horde teams? You've got cults, you've got blooded to a certain extent, but then they're like a cross between. So you're still losing.
They're a little bit of a mix, and then Farstalkers are also a little bit of a mix. We have a lot of mixed range teams. It's just that, and then Gellerpox, and I think Gellerpox might be playable right now after their changes, but I have never really enjoyed playing as Gellerpox, so I literally cannot tell. But the last time I talked to Orion W in person, the Gellerpox stan, he did mention that there may be a little bit of juice to squeeze out of that team right now. So maybe
5-inch move. It's
and then I think Imperial Navy Breachers would maybe be the last were what used to be a melee horde, but now that they've been reduced to having to always take 2 robots, I probably would not treat them as a melee horde.
No, well, they're also only 3 attacks, aren't they? Except for the X guy and the Mr. Chain Fist? They
got a Chain Fist and then the Axeman, and then the leader also could do it. So they had a couple people that could float around, and then Subductors right at the edge of being a melee horde, but they're like a defensive melee horde. They really don't have the tools to just run at their opponents and push 4 or 5 damage into their opponents' faces regularly.
Exaction Squad. Yeah. They're very good into cults. Funnily enough, that leader, I played Mikhail, a friend of mine.
Oh yeah, he's very Aquila with the -1 APL bubble, and you're like, oh, I can injure you. They're like, cool. I ignore injury. I give you -1 APL, so you can't do anything, so you can't fight anymore, or you can't control the point. And then we've got a shield, so I will go first, double parry you, and you're like, my accurate too, no.
Yeah, exactly. He because I can take brutal with Sinew. The regular shield guys, they're okay. Because you can sort of stop them unless they roll that crit from being able to double parry. But that leader with the lethal 5-up and the severe and everything he gets, he killed 3 torments on his own.
Wow! Now that's a RoboCop movie or a Judge Dredd movie, like in itself. You're like, this is Hab Block 8 calling in.
Exactly, and the fact they can shoot into combat from across the board with that sniper, the 4/4 damage sniper. Whoa, man, that team's got some tricks. And they shut down 2 APL teams from scoring with the Aquila. I didn't realize that because he put it on one point and he goes, now I'm going to move it to the other point. It's just like, oh, okay.
It floats around the map, causing massive disturbances for the lesser folk.
Yes, exactly.
The downtrodden chaos cultists.
They're a very strong team. I can see them, especially with goats coming up as well, that they're going to do very well.
The big changes to Exaction Squad have given them the tools that they didn't have in the last edition. I know, Ryan S. from the UK, big, YouTube creator. He's been on here once. He was really into Exaction Squad, but he could never tell if he was going to win a match against Felgor because it was just always a dice roll. Because the moment the Felgor hit you with a critical one time, your shield guy becomes useless. But now you ignore injury or you ignore hit modifiers on your shield, so you're always rolling 4 dice on 4s, generally with the reroll. So you're rolling 5 dice on 4, always going first. Now that Felgor matchup probably swings a little bit more in your favor, but you're still always riding the line of one of the subductors goes down that you don't expect to, and then suddenly goats pour in from an angle that your shooters can't adjust to.
Exactly. And the fact they can't be you can't modify their APL. Oh, team wide.
Yeah. They've got the phosphor lumens and then the flash visors, and they're just like they can get medicked and not care.
Yeah,
one of the few teams that can still do the medic thing and not care.
Very, very good.
Do you have a list of teams that you're glad you didn't run into on your long undefeated streak at tournaments? Because we've mentioned here that there's a couple weird matchups that are not really in your favor, Exaction Squad being one of the weirder ones. Are there other ones that you are glad you didn't run into, or that you were surprised that you beat when you ran into during that tournament run?
Well, this is the good thing about why I chose Colts was looking at them on paper. Yes, they do have some matchups where they're not likely to, it's against them to win. But there's no auto lose matchups where you go into a team and you're just like, right, I'm just going to lose this. Like commandos into elite teams or anything like that. They don't have that. So there's always play into, so far what I've found, into all the teams that I've played. Hard matchups would definitely be Exaction. Hand of the Archon is a very hard matchup because I've got so many crits, and the 3 APL buffs is pretty insane.
And there's also almost always like a line from the Hand of the Archon deployment zone to your board getting stunned, so you gotta make sure you're spaced out.
Exactly. And the grenade, the D3, and then when I activate every time after is D3. That into 7 wound models is really killy. And the fact that it doesn't go away and just keeps doing that damage every time I activate is very difficult. Void Dancers is an interesting matchup. Although I out-activate them, they're pretty killy at the same time. Haven't played Corsairs yet into them, but I think also what's a team? Warp Coven could be quite difficult with all their Seek Light and all their shenanigans. But I'm not too worried about Goats. I haven't played into them yet, but Goats, because I can stun them quite easily, I've got quite a few sources of stun. The only thing that scares me about that team is the bloody Mangler. It's so broken. The fight twice, even if I kill him in the first round of combat, he's doing 14 damage. That's killing a Torment.
Yeah, reliably killing a Torment.
Yeah.
Are you worried at all about something like Fool Slanesh Legionaries who are just like blitzing down the board with -1 to hit flat?
Not really, because I can make them -1 to hit. So it then sort of just becomes a flat fight, and I've got accurate too, so it's slightly more in my favor for that. And if I charge them, they don't get it, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah.
With the new things, yeah. So if they're staging and I can get those charges off into ones that don't have it, then I'm hitting better than they are, and I can usually try and get those kills with the fight twice and stuff.
Yeah, it does become a little bit more of a dice roll matchup. I think in the past, things like Heretic Circle were theoretically an issue for Chaos Cults, just because it was hard for them to reliably execute enough Necrons, and because the Necrons would get up and then shoot you again.
Yes.
I think at the beginning of this edition, when Tesla Weaves were D3 flat every time, that probably also would present a fair number of issue for Chaos Cults. But I guess this last round of nerfs basically pulled back the veil on the melee threats that were waiting for the elites to get a little bit worse.
Yes, so my final game in Manchester, which was the Manchester GT on, was it last weekend? Where I won the golden ticket.
Yep.
So I'll be seeing you at Worlds. Was my last game was against Harrison, who was running Hyrotech. And it was on ITD, so that devastating attack with the 2 Dev 2 that he can then turn into Blast. You kill him, and then he'd come up back behind your guys, behind that barricade, and then shoot them and kill a couple of cultists, or a couple of devotees, or and it's a strong gun. I think it was 5 attacks, 3 damage, but you can make it Blast 2, so it's getting lethal 5 up. And I had a lot of trouble trying to deal with those guns. They're another. I don't see, like, they were very strong before, but they're still incredibly strong.
I think all of the most competitive existing Hyrotech Circle players think that they got nerfed too hard, but looking at the rules, there probably is room for adjustment, and maybe there is still room for play. I know that some of the listeners on the podcast who've been on our Patreon are like, they're not good anymore. But
shout out to
things
Ted.
change with time. Maybe Necrons are better as to fight against the new Chaos Cult menace.
Exactly. He did take the Technomancer into the fight. I was talking to another Necrons player afterwards. He went, "Oh, I would have taken the Chronomancer." So maybe that helped me. I'm not too sure. But it was a very good.
With the teleport, so being able to teleport like a 3 APL Immortal into the correct position to do some stuff in your backline that you really can't interact with because it's just moved up 6 inches could be useful.
Exactly. But also the guy can go on guard on conceal. I had a lot of trouble with him on the long side of the map. Who's he? He's a Deathmark, isn't he?
Deathmark,
yeah. It's surprising.
Yes. Yeah.
It's surprising how many movement lanes on Volcus require you to move dash into position, but that move dash generally doesn't have a fully safe spot up the board if you can shoot in the middle of either the 3-inch or the 6-inch chunk of movement, especially because the Deathmark doesn't have obscurity when he shoots.
Exactly. And the fact that you can't shoot him because he's on conceal until he activates that guard. Oh man, it's strong. They're
a couple teams that you're worried about, mostly like melee centered opponents.
Blast one as well. So anything with blast is like frag grenades, devotees and stuff can. I think it's more like 50% they can survive a frag grenade. On ITD, they're probably going to kill them maybe because you got the lethal 5. But anything that's like hard blast, heavy blast, yeah, I'm not massively keen on it.
Did you have to play the Inquisitorial Agents with Exaction Squad Nightmare pairing?
No, I didn't. Funnily enough, I haven't. Nobody's playing in the UK at the moment, so they've sort of gone to the wayside for Inquisitorial Agents. We're quite lucky on that one. I went into Ryan Slater twice when he was playing Star Striders. So once on ITD and once on Volcus, and again, you got to really watch out for those overwatches, the counteracts, where they can do it on conceal. So it's sort of the persona non grata is the Navis guys who can fire it. So you're always just aiming for them as soon as possible to try and take them out. And then they're going to struggle to kill those torments with their other guns.
Yeah, they've got the one big scary gun, and you have 3 torments that you're not moving till turn 2, so they get exactly 1 chance to fire the gun at a target that they want to target.
Exactly. Plague Marines is also because it's like an anti-horde team, and they've got a lot of blast. I had a bit of trouble into them. It was only I think I only won by 1 point on that game. Because they're incredibly hard to kill, and they've got the contagion, which makes me hit on 5s. So that's really hurting. Like accurate 2 is amazing for that, but other than that, you're in trouble.
Yeah, because they've got like multiple blight grenades. They've got like multiple sources of torrent if they want it. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly.
He took both frags and blight grenades. It was on ITD, so was a huge amount of blast, and I was sort of having to hide behind, one guy in for a barricade.
Yeah, and normally you reduce your opponent's hit rate by 1, which does a pretty good job of keeping you survivable, but because Plague Marines go to 4 with Ceaseless a lot of the times, it's not really that much of a downgrade. Like, they're like, oh, I'll probably still make the average number of hits that you were expecting if I didn't have... Like, Ceaseless will give them an extra hit, whereas between the two of them, they're probably getting maybe slightly more crits on average than they would otherwise, but then less overall hits, which is still not what you want.
No, well, the severe as well is really strong. But yeah, because when you charge him, the ceaseless for him is insane. He was able to block a lot of shots. Into a lot of matchups, like any Marine matchups, I usually take Horned on my Torments, so they can run up and at least do some chip. Yeah. So into elites, it's usually that, and then you're trying to do chip damage with your Mind Witch. So trying to get those bubbles. If you can bring them down to say 10 wounds with a charge and the chip damage at the start, then your torment is killing them in 1. Like if you roll 4 or 5 shots in combat, that's how you deal with Marines. Is just that chip damage to try and get through it. Although it doesn't work on Hyrotech because they heal.
Oh, yeah, right.
No, Hyrotech because of their healing, which is very difficult to get through. Hyrotech was the only one I didn't beat him on the kill up.
That's also because they rewind their kill up. So you spend some work, and then they're like, "Oh, okay, that work was good. That's a commendable effort," and then they just unwind it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're an insane team, that one. Sorry, one sec. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think after this one, maybe I'll take Colts to a couple more tournaments, and then I think I might retire them and go back to Wreckers, because Wreckers I find a lot more fun to play.
Yeah, Rekkas I think are like it's like a pure joy because you're just throwing 6 dice in all of your sequences.
Yes, yeah. While Colt, the accurate 2 is great. When you're hitting on 4s, it's quite difficult if you don't have that ability to turn Wrecker points around, Yeah, they're good fun. I highly recommend them. The only problem is, which I don't like about the team, is they are very expensive to get all the models. So any new player coming in and going, yeah, I want to try that team, it's I think it's about £95 here for the whole set.
Yeah, I think it's like 3 boxes. I think it's 3 boxes here.
Yeah, because it's the Accursed and the regular Devotees and the Cult Demagogue box, so it's 3 boxes. But then, like, there's no like list building. You just bring the thing.
Yeah, exactly. It is better than Warp Coven and Hunter Clade in that respect. Of there's no real list building. You don't have to build any options. You just buy the 3 boxes, which are like 180 here right now, I think.
Wow, holy hell.
Which is a lot. But if you really want to play them, they're also like a team that's one of the better ones for kit bashing. If you wanted to kit bash in a direction, anyways, Can You Roll a Crit did his Gellerpox versions of like Necron Gellerpox, but those probably would also work in the same vein for Chaos Cults of like small Necron into big mechanical monstrosity Necron. And you could probably do like Nurgle, like Dorks into, the Gellerpox Hulks would probably be a natural progression of evolution too. So like there's room for the team to be a kit bash team, which is nice.
I like the idea of doing them as Necron. That's really cool. Going up through that. Probably, I don't know, what are they called? The commune though. Like, what models would you use for those?
For the commune on Necrons, I'm sure there's enough Cryptex and Cryptech adjacent models where you could probably come together, come with like a Psyker looking dude, an Icon looking dude, and then a leader, and then 2 melee guys. You could just do like the Praetorians. I don't know. Maybe it would look a little big on the 25mm base, but I'm sure you could find something.
That's something else you need to think about too for Colts is the Mind Witch. Which head do you draw visibility from? So
everyone knows the Mind Witch head is the thing that's sitting on top of the guy, right?
And I have proof of this because if you look at the app, inside the app, and when you look at all the pictures on the data cards, they're all focused on the head, and you look at the Mind Witch one and it's focused on the head out the front, so you can get some gnarly angles with it sort of slightly overhanging the base even though it's right in the center.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that's always good to talk with your opponent ahead of time, and then if you both can't agree, you go to the TO and like, all right, just tell me which head we're using, because GW visibility rules are a fuzzy rule system, and they are up to the interpretation of your local TO.
Yes, exactly. I had to clear it as well, so all my opponents I told at the beginning, and they were okay with it, thankfully. But last edition, the Blessed Blades were on 32s. With this data slate, they've changed it to 28s, and I didn't realize. So now I've got to go back and rebase my Blessed Blades after building them for last edition. But I was very apologetic to all my opponents and said, I'm really sorry. Luckily, it didn't sort of, come up in the game at all where it made a difference. But if you're building them, it's definitely worth keeping an eye out for that and not getting caught out.
All right. Well, we've done all the Chaos Cult stuff. Why don't we talk about the new Crossfire Games products? Because me and Jason have been very much enjoying our little sponsorship of your really nice new edition Kill Team products. Mostly because the actual GW token sets blend in way, way, way too much with the Voltus board that they provided in the original box. So if you put down the conceal orders on the board, they disappear.
Exactly. Yeah, that was one of the design points when I was designing those, was to make them actually visible. It's going. Crossfire Games is going really well. We've got. It's interesting when I ship out all the orders, seeing where the different communities are around the world. Like I'm doing a lot of shipping to Sweden and Sweden and Iceland. There's quite a few people playing in Iceland, which is really cool to see. Finland and Norway, Singapore, there seems to be quite a big community there. New Zealand as well.
If anyone in Singapore is listening to us, give us a shout out. We'd love to drop by and see what the Singapore kill team looks like.
Hong Kong's got a big one as well. So it's great to see all these different communities that you don't really hear about or see online and being able to see where they are. As for the products, it's going really well. I'm continually designing stuff for it, and it's now my full-time job. So it's taking up 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, quite happily. I'm still working my way through all the faction tokens, so I think I've got about 4 or 5 left to do. But the idea,
new sets just around the corner, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the idea with those is when you buy the faction tokens, you get what comes in the box, but then you also get equipment tokens. So a lot of the time, I can't remember if I've activated equipment or something like that. So having a little thing there to turn over is really good. And we've also done ones for the teams, like the White Dwarfs teams that don't have faction tokens available. So it was hilarious trying to design those. Like for Warp Coven, how do you do Manifest Destiny? Like what is a symbol for that? So I just did the Destiny logo, the Destiny game logo, but it's coming up with all these designs for those, and I've been putting off sort of Galapox and Admech and Star Striders for that very reason, but now I've sort of got to knuckle down and do it. But yeah, it's been selling amazingly well all over the world. We're working on the Battle Box now, which will be an all-in-one box. So inside the lid is a snap-on lid that comes off, and you've got a dice tray there. And then under that, the essentials box that we sell will nestle in there, so that can come out. And then there's a slide at the front that pulls up, and you've got a tray, a removable magnetic tray that'll hold up to 40 25mm bases. And under that is a drawer which you can hold more cards or dice or whatever you need to. And when you set up the dice tray, we've got these tag sort of slots that stick on the top, which then has space for 6 dice. So you can put your retained dice up there. So you can see, after you've rolled, you can see what people have got and then work out from there. And the front slide that goes down the front can then be pushed in the back. So you've got a backboard to bounce your dice off, and you can put all your tokens, your equipment tokens and things in that. So everything is there at a glance, ready to be seen. And that should be coming out probably the end of the month. We're just trying to finalize with China about getting some branded mouse pads over to go in there. And then you'll be able to, everything you need will be in a box that can then fit in your backpack. So that's sort of the end game that we need to get to with it. So yeah, it's going really well, man. I'm excited for it. I got to quit my job, which was amazing. Like
living the dream, anymore. Small business
living
owner,
the dream, yeah.
Small kill team side job that turned into a main job.
Exactly, yeah. So and after Kill Team, we're pushing into 40K as well. So I'm doing designs for that, because that's where a huge market is.
Yeah, I think Age of Sigmar and 40K. As much as I really like Kill Team, the amount of product that Kill Team needs is relatively small. Age of Sigmar players, much bigger crowd, and then 40K is, I think, like 10 or 12 times larger crowd.
Yeah, you look at LGT every year. LGT gets like 800 to 1,000 40K players, and we usually get like 50 to 80 Kill Team players. So we call it the pit because they play it in a velodrome, and all the 40K players are in the middle, and you just go in there, and it's the pit because it just stinks. Like if you live in the UK, come to LGT. It's because we're in a room off to the side, so we don't have to deal with that. So
when is LGT this year? As we move from the product sponsorship segment to the let's talk about your local gaming segment and the horrifying cult domination that you've been pushing onto your local player base. What is coming up in the UK area that you want to talk about?
So we're very lucky with tournaments. We've got 2 to 3 big tournaments a month. around the UK. A lot of those are the UKTC ones, which is they do tournaments, and there's a lot of golden tickets. There's 2 golden tickets for every UKTC event.
One for hobby, one for best placement, I assume.
One for best opponent. So that's your hobby crossed with your best player vote. So your opponents vote on who their best player was, and then they'll get a ticket as well. But LGT is sort of the final of it, and that is in September, September the 27th and 28th. So I think tickets are already up for sale on that. So yeah, it's an amazing thing. We try and do a lot of travel here. There's sort of a core group of us that go around the country to these tournaments.
And are you in the London area or the north? Because I think from what I've heard over, bumping into the UK scene a couple times, there's like the more London-y area, and then there's like basically like North UK.
Yes, so it's amazing to see all the different areas pop up. I'm based in London, and we have a huge kill team scene where there's like a WhatsApp group with over 300 people on it. So
it's like Can You Roll a Crit, you, Bart, and basically a lot of the most competitive players, because you have a little bit more cross-pollination, I assume, just because it's a tighter network.
Yes, so we're all in that, but it's hilarious when like a GW announces a new box or something. You'll come home and there's like 1,000 messages from this WhatsApp group, so you got to sort of trawl through them and see what's going on. But it's great for new players to come in. We've got in London, we've got like a beginners night at I think the Tuesday, I can't remember if it's the beginning or end of the month. Nazif is running that, and it's at Seven Dials in Covent Garden. So that's always selling out. It's good seeing new players come in through that, and then they come to tournaments from that, and it's addictive. Kill Team is addictive. You sort of go, I'll play 1 or 2 games, and then now it's your life and it's your job, and it's
got a good hook for sure. I think the feedback that you get in Kill Team just ends up being a lot faster compared to something like 40K, where the distance between you as an intro player and you as a making strong competitive decisions, the distance is really, really far. In Kill Team, you can get to the point where you're making interesting decisions pretty quick, and then you run into the spot where your opponent is also making interesting decisions relatively quick. So the feedback loop of engaging gameplay happens much earlier.
Exactly, and there's it's a great place with this chat, our group chat. It's a great place to ask rules. So people, how does this interaction work? And we'll sort of sit down and discuss it on the chat, and then come back with an answer. But other than London's probably got the biggest scene. There's Knott's Kill Team up in Nottingham. There's the Bristol guys. There's guys in Cambridge. There's guys in Oxford. There's guys in Manchester. Guys all the way up in Falkirk and Scotland, Leeds, South Yorkshire. These huge groups that are sort of springing up and playing into it is amazing. And it's usually based around like a couple of people will start it and then do hobby games, for other people coming in, and it just grows from there. And it's good to see the community growing and becoming bigger, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah, connecting Kill Team communities across the globe, and hopefully this year we'll hit up, I think, Singapore and Iceland. Those sound like fun targets for us to try to figure out.
Should be good fun. I've never been to Iceland. Been to Singapore before. Iceland would be cool, man.
Iceland was great.
Very, very cool.
I went ways back, but getting to Singapore would be cool. We had Beijing on, relatively recently, and that was cool. So hearing about all these different regions popping up and everyone enjoying love of the game, that's definitely what we're here for.
Exactly. Yeah. We've got a couple of tournaments coming up for the Knots guys as well, because I know you heard about Chris Law.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, Chris was a UK player who was based in Nottingham at Knott's Kill Team, who had gone to Worlds twice. I know Ryan Slater just did a video on him. Sadly, in February, he passed away from pancreatitis, and he left behind his wife and 2-year-old son, and his son had just turned 2. So we've got a few tournaments coming up where we're basically trying to raise money for his family. So do you guys mind if I sort of promote those?
No, I mean, we both had a good time interacting with Chris at Worlds, and I think when we both heard about it, it was definitely a little bit of a gut punch, because Chris had one of like the more fun anecdotes that I had from Worlds, where I like passed by a game. He said he wasn't going to bring blooded because people wouldn't make mistakes at Worlds, and I told him everybody makes mistakes, and then I walked away, and I came back 30 minutes later, and Liam from Australia had given him like a 4-model blast like plague grenade and lost pretty much a third of his Inquisition team. And Chris was looking at me like, "You were right, Travis. You're so right." And Liam was just like, "Why would you curse me this way?" And I was like, "See, everybody makes mistakes." I just kept going. So it was really crazy to hear that he passed away. I know that there's an Indiegogo. Hearing about the 2 local tournaments in the UK area to, back up your comrade in arms effectively is definitely something that, we support as communities, because as much as communities are fun places, they're also a place where all of us make friends, make connections, and those are just as important as the games we're playing.
If not
exactly.
more.
So, say again?
If not more important.
Very much so, yeah. So, yeah, as I was saying, Chris was part of the Not to Kill team, and he was sort of the first port of call for a lot of new players coming in, because he was really good at teaching the game, and he was a teacher by trade. And, I highly recommend you go check out Ryan Slater's from Turning Point Tactics video about him. It's a beautiful video. But yeah, we're just trying to raise money for his family. We've got I'm running a tournament in London on the 19th of July. Tickets are just on sale now, funnily enough, where we are doing a 3-game tournament, which is going to be more beginner specific. So the idea is you can come along with no experience necessary, learn the game in a tournament format, and all proceeds other than what we have to pay to the venue are going to go to his family. And the tickets are going to be a little bit more expensive than normal. They're going to be £35 a head. But to compensate for that, Crossfire Games is putting up £1,400 worth of prizes. So there'll be tons on tons of prizes because Chris was also an amazing painter and kit basher. So there'll be best painted, best kit bash, and these are all first, second, and thirds. Best painted, best kit bash, best individual model, best display board. And we're also going to be doing like best opponent, because he was famous for having this ginormous ginger beard. We're going to do the best beard competition as well. So whoever comes along can win that. People should get growing now so they can get around it. Or we're accepting fake beards as well.
I see you're not really in the competition state right now, Nick.
I cannot grow a beard to save myself. They call me patchy because I get huge patches under my chin. So it's going to be a good day. There's going to be a lot of prizes to win, so everybody can have a crack at it, no matter what your skill level. And it's supporting a good cause. We want to help him out. I know Jason Zammit, who's one of the founders of Not to Kill Team, has put him forward to GW for, is it Heroes of Kill Team?
I don't know if there's definitely like GW
Kill Team Heroes
communities. I think Warhammer Heroes or something, because I know
that's it. Warhammer Heroes.
Year they honored the guy from Texas who did a lot of the Imperial Titan painting. He was a big part of their local scene. So Chris definitely sounds like he could be a version for the UK, at least for the Kill Team side. I think the unfortunate part is a lot of the Kill Team scene. We have to like garner a lot more support from our smaller player base for us to even pretend to average what 40k players impact are. But Chris was definitely a cool dude, and it's definitely very sad to hear that he is left behind a 2-year-old son. So anything that the UK community, NOTS community, and even global community can do, if anyone has interacted with Chris, I'm sure the family would very much appreciate it. I did my small thing and I donated a little already.
Nice. Do you mind if I send you the GoFundMe page to put in the thing?
We can absolutely do that.
Yeah, we'll at least have the 2 tournament links, and I'm sure the GoFundMe will be there. But I don't mind having a GoFundMe, and we'll have the Crossfire links. So if anybody wants to support Nick's tournament run from afar and also get new merch for your Kill Team goods.
Exactly. That was the other thing. On the day we were also running a raffle. Okay, and the raffle is going to be a full suite of Crossfire Games products. And what we're going to do is, if you donate to the GoFundMe, if you can't make the tournament, and you still want to help out, you can donate to the GoFundMe. And if you send me an email, I'll put the email up for you guys to share with a picture of what you have donated. For every £5, we'll buy you a raffle ticket, and we can ship anywhere in the world. So if you want to help out and still be in the chance to win something, then that is definitely something we can do.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys.
All right, Nick. Thanks for coming on, talking about Chaos Cults and Crossfire Games, and a little bit of a sad note at the end with, one of the pillars of the Knots community.
The UK community. He was known all over, yeah. Brilliant, guys. Well, thank you for having me. Speak to you soon, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for coming on. And as usual, thank you, listeners, for listening until the end.